Hey guys, Stealth here. Yesterday the new DLC was fully released, and with it we also got some of the new coalitions. We got the United States and Canada, we got the USSR and North Korea, and West Germany and Denmark. So we got a lot of new options with those. Now, as I'm recording this video, the coalitions themselves are still a little buggy, so that if you have any prototype units in your deck and you go actually into battle, somehow the matchmaker or the game considers your deck a general deck. So a general NATO deck which does not grant you access to the prototypes. So keep in mind that you cannot use these prototypes just yet, but I expect that they will be releasing a hot patch or a hotfix very soon. Anyway, this is my NORAD deck, so the US and Canada. And I think this is a great combination because you get to fill up some gaps that both countries had. So let's get into it. Logistics is not that specifically interesting. We got the FOB. We got 5 HEMETs. I went with these over the LHVW because the HEMETs are slightly faster. They travel at 100 off-road versus 90. They carry slightly more supplies, 700 points more. I know that you get one more of these HLVWs, but I think that the HEMET is just slightly better overall. Then I went with 6 Humvees. Something to note about the DLC as well is that the command tanks got a good deal cheaper. I believe that the command M1a2 Abrams used to be in the range of 200 to 230, but right now they've been reduced to 160, so they actually become a lot more viable. But for this deck, which is just a general NORAD deck, so I'm going to go for, say, 2v2 to 4v4. I will not be taking this deck into 10v10s because I don't think it is that good, or at least not that good at 10v10s. I'll be making a separate deck and I might be doing a video on those as well if you like. For the command unit, I went with a Humvee, nice and fast. It is very good mobility, or it has very good mobility off-road at 90 kph. Road speed, of course, is 150. Armor is 0, but you don't always need the armor. And then finally, for a logistics chopper, I went with the CH-47C Super Chinook. Reason for this is that you get 4 Super Chinooks, or you get 3 of these CH-53s. And while these things do carry more supplies per unit, I don't get as many of them. And I want to get that flexibility of having one Chinook being drained, one going back to base, the other one flying back to the front line. So that is why I went with the Super Chinook. Moving on to infantry, and this is where these countries really start to complement each other. Because the US did not really have great infantry. They got, of course, the Marines, they got some Delta Force, but they don't exactly have any high anti-tank capability. Of course, they're more meant as infantry killers with their MP5 SD. But the riflemen, the light riflemen, the riflemen 90s, the Marines 90s, they're not that good. All of their anti-tank weaponry is lagging behind at 13 AP power. Here's an armor penetration of 19. Riflemen get 19. Base riflemen get 13. So it's not all that good. The Canadians get the Canadian Airborne 90, and this is why I went with, because these guys get slightly more armor penetration at 20. Their accuracy is pretty good, and they have a range of 875, which is something that not many units get in this situation. The Riflemen get a range of 525, Riflemen 90, 700, and I believe that that's the same range as the Marines, because they also use the AT4. So with this you got a better range, you got better accuracy as well, because these things have 45 and lower. You do not get that many of them, and I went with the Grizzly because that gave me the most units. You get 14 of these. It's not a very high amount of infantry, but for anything ranging from 2v2 to 4v4 it should be enough. Then I got the SMAWs. Of course, very nice anti-tank / anti-infantry units with their small weapon. Good range, good armor penetration, nice accuracy at 70%. They do have an HE power, so they can go after infantry as well. They carry a large amount of these rockets, 10 of them. They are pretty cheap at only 15 per unit, and then you pay for the transport. I went with the LVTP-7A1 to give them a bit more anti-infantry capability. Of course you want to have this grenade launcher with you in order to deal with more infantry. Talking about infantry, if I want to have infantry in the town eliminated, I'm going to bring my pioneers. They got a submachine gun and the M9 flamethrower. And I'm transporting these guys in the TH-495, which is a Canadian IFV. You do get a decent autocannon. Accuracy is not that great and armor penetration is only 2. But for 15 points it's not that bad, so I went with this one. And then finally the Stinger C in the Humvee. I want to have some anti-air capability. Stingers are by far the best that you can get. If I list this out, anti-aircraft. You do get the Javelins, but I think that the Stingers, because they are far more accurate, have a much better chance of actually hitting their target. I know that they are slightly more expensive, and that is probably down to the accuracy. The range, of course, is not that great. But I'd rather have my Stingers hit the target than have a better range and miss every time. Moving on to support. We get the Centurion Marksman from Canada, and this is a very nice SPOG. Of course, the US did have some SPOGs. They got the M163 Pivads and the Vulcan. But if you compare these guys to the Centurion Marksman, you're going to see major differences. 6 frontal armor versus 1. Range 2800 versus 2625. Accuracy 50% versus 45. Stabilized, whereas this one does not have a stabilizer. So I think this is pretty much a no-brainer. You want to get the Centurion Marksman because it is an all-round far better unit for only 10 points more. So this is definitely one of the major advantages of having the combination of NORAD. Next up, a standard chaparral. I want to get some anti-helicopter units in here. You never know what you're going to encounter. So I went with the chaparral, and combined with the Centurion, these guys together should be able to tackle pretty much anything. Then, Bison 81mm. You do get some of the other mortar carriers, of course. I could have gone with the LAV-M. If you compare these things, they are pretty damn similar. Actually, sorry, I'm comparing the LAV-M to the LAV-M. That's the difference. Let's see, I believe that the Bison is slightly more mobile. Let's see. It has a little bit more armor for 5 points. But you shouldn't be using this armor anyway. So actually, as I'm looking at this now, I'm going to reconsider. I'm going to kick out the Bisons and get the LAV-Ms in here. Then I got the PIP-3. I want to get some long-range anti-air. I know I could have gone with the Patriot, but the Patriot only gives you 2 units, which is a very low amount. And if you lose one, you lose 50% of your anti-air capability. The PIP-3, it does not have that great a range. It does have 4.5 kilometers versus 5.6 kilometers on the Patriot. But it's 40 points cheaper and you get 4 of these guys. Of course they are both radar guided, so I need to keep an eye on seaplanes. But otherwise it should be okay. In the tank section I went with US only. 1 card of M1a2 Abrams. Very heavy tanks. I rarely play US. Mostly because I don't like their infantry, but that's probably going to change now that they have teamed up with Canada. So the M1a2 Abrams is something that I am not that familiar with. But the stats look very solid. Great accuracy, great stabilizer, very high amount of armor penetration, and good frontal armor combined with good speed. The one thing that this thing could use a bit more of is autonomy. But I suppose that all the armor is getting pretty heavy and weighing down the vehicle, reducing its mobility. Next, this is going to be pretty much the mainstay of my deck, or at least my armor section. M1A1s and M1IPs. Both of these tanks are solid American tanks. They might have been slightly buffed or nerfed in the DLC, I'm not entirely sure. But I think that they were around this price point. Again, not entirely sure, so check out the patch notes if you want to get a full laydown of what exactly was changed. I did consider doing a video on the patch notes, but it's 15 pages and I will probably bore you to death before you get to the end of the video. So I'm not going to do any of those. Anyway, M1a1, good armor. Same for the M1IP, it has great armor, but the armor penetration in M1a1 is definitely better. So this is more of my medium tank. This is going to take down vehicles and tanks which are pretty similar to this one. If you get anything heavier, you call in the M1a1 or the M1a2. And finally, the M8 AGS, the gun system. Great rate of fire on these things, 13. Accuracy is pretty damn good, 65%, and even on the move these things will hit most of the time. Armor penetration of 17 is very high for a 50-point vehicle, but they got no armor to speak of, so keep in mind that these things will go down to autocannon fire. Pretty much any kind of AT weapon is going to hit them, and of course other tanks are a major problem. You want to get something like the M1a1 to take the punches, and then the M8 to deliver the damage. In Reconnaissance, we can also see some changes. First of all, the longbow has been nerfed. You do not get any, you no longer get 3 cards or 3 units per card. You only get 2. So that is something that was nerfed slightly. I think it's for the better because these things are extremely annoying. I know they're not that difficult to kill, but they're extremely fast. They have exceptional optics. They got 16 Hellfires, which they double tap, so they most of the time get a hit. I think that these things, well, you don't really need 3 of them. Of course, it's nice to have them, but I think that this is for the better. Then, Recce. This is something that the US did not have. They did not have anything with exceptional stealth. They of course also get this very nice sniper rifle which has 1 armor penetration, which means that you can snipe vehicles, particularly command vehicles, with it. And I want to use these guys as passive spotters close to the front line. These guys are going to be my eyes and ears where other vehicles or other reconnaissance units might not be able to go, because they're going to get detected. Transport for these guys is the CH-147, also known as the Chinook. This is because I want to get these guys out quickly, and the Chinook can get them to places where other vehicles might take very long to get, or where they cannot even go to. Then, the Seals. Note about the Seals, they have gotten a price nerf. So, or a price buff, depending on how you want to look at it. You used to pay 25 for these guys, I believe, maybe 30. That's now 35. So keep in mind that these guys have been made more expensive. And I want to use these guys as my door kickers. I do not have Delta Force in here, in the infantry tab. Canadian Airborne is pretty capable of dealing with other infantry, but of course nowhere near as capable as Navy SEALs. So that's why I went with the V150. I can quickly get them into a town, get the Navy SEALs deployed, use that grenade launcher, probably, hopefully get them out to make sure that I don't lose them, because I only get 4. And finally, I'm going with the M551 ACAV. Reason for this is that they have been price nerfed or buffed, depending on how you want to look at it again. These things used to cost you about 35 points. They are now 25 points, so they're dirt cheap. I know they're not the best reconnaissance unit, but you do get a high amount of them. You get 8. They got medium stealth. They are very mobile off-road, 70 kph, great autonomy. Of course, the gun is nothing to speak of. 30% accuracy, 11 armor penetration, but they do also fire, or they do a good deal amount of HE damage, so they can suppress infantry as well. But I'm gonna use these guys mostly for their optics. Now that we're in the reconnaissance section, the Bradley line over here has also been buffed. The price has been decreased by quite a lot. These things used to cost you 50, I believe. The Bradley M3A1 cost you 75, is now 60. Bradley M3A2 used to cost you 90, is now 75. So these guys have been made a lot cheaper. And that means that I will probably be using the M3A1 Bradley a lot more in the future, because they are great vehicles. Good speed, good maneuverability, very good optics. It's not great, not exceptional of course, but you don't get that on many vehicles, especially not when they're armed. But you get 12 ITOs, which have a great accuracy and can penetrate pretty much any tank. And then there's the Bushmaster with an extremely high accuracy. For now, I wanted to see how the M551 ACAV performs. how I can use these guys optimally, so that's why I have them in the deck, but I might switch these guys out later. Vehicle-wise, another Canadian unit I went with here is the Chimera. Now there has been quite some discussion about these guys already, because for 120 points you can also get an M1a2. The reason I went with the Chimera is because it is more heavily armored than the M1a2. It has 20 frontal armor, where the M1a2 has 17. It has 12 side armor, where the M1a2 has 7. The gun on these things is pretty similar, at least stat-wise. Accuracy 60%, no stabilizer, and that means that these things have a completely different role. Armor penetration of 19 is the same, but the rate of fire is not that good. The reason I have the Chimera in my deck is because I want to be able to set up roadblocks, or at least that's pretty much how you can consider this thing. These cannot one-shot any tank, but most of them, because they're doing so much damage, and especially if you team them up with, for example, a combat, they're going to be extremely effective. So I want to get the Chimera in a defensive role, which I think is exactly what it was designed to do. They don't have a stabilizer, they're not meant to go to the front line and deal damage as they're moving. But that is what I have my M1a2s for. Now you could say kick out the Chimera and go with another tank. That is definitely a possibility that you have. But I like the Chimera. I think it's a good unit. I went with 4 of these to give them a little bit more accuracy. And because they are going to get fired at, you need that lower amount of stun time. You want to get a faster morale recovery. Then M67A1 Zippos. I love napalm tanks. If you've seen a couple of my replays, you know that I really like these units, and that they are extremely effective at taking out infantry, and that they can put up smoke screens if you really need them to. Of course, they're not as effective at putting up smoke screens as mortars would be, but they are very versatile units, and I went with 8 of these at the hardened level. Next, the combat. I have the feeling that this thing got reduced in price. I think it was 35, maybe 40. But now at 30, these things are very nice units to have. Great ground range, great anti-helicopter range as well. An accuracy of 70% is extraordinary. You don't see this on many vehicles. Stabilizer, 40%. I would still prefer to fire this thing sitting still, but a stabilizer of 40% on a 30-point unit is very high. And you get an armor penetration of 5. The one thing you don't want these things to do is get hit, because they don't have a lot of armor, but their mobility is pretty good, so try to keep them near cover, where you can break line of sight with the enemy. And then finally in this section I got the M901A1 ITV anti-tank unit. If I'm dealing with heavy anti-tanks units, if I'm dealing with heavy tanks, I want to get the M901 in here. Because of its great accuracy, great armor penetration, and good range. Of course, fast tanks, for example the T-80 line, can still get in range of this thing before the second missile hits and kills the tank. So keep that in mind. But maybe if you combine the M901 with a Chimera, the Chimera could do the same amount of damage, or at least a high amount of damage, and possibly stun lock the tank, while the M901 kills it off. Helicopter-wise, I got the M60L DAP. I know that the DLC has been out for quite a long time, since I believe halfway through December, but I have never used the DAP since, because I just don't touch the US. The DAP has been changed. Of course, it's not changed since the DLC 3 beta. It's still the one with the stingers. It does not carry the Hellfires anymore. Would be nice though. But it still has the twin autocannons, which means that it is, in combination with the stingers, going to chew through any helicopter. Range 1575. I really don't see the point of having a twin minigun in here, because most units will be firing back at you if you get to 1050 meter range. So you want to get these things for anti-helicopter duty. Use the stingers, use the twin M230, and combine them with other helicopters to make for a very effective battle group. Next up, against heavy tanks, I want to have something that is more mobile than my M901 ITV, and that's the Apache. 8 Hellfires, semi-actives. I need to keep that in mind. They are not fire and forgets, like for example the Apache A64D. So I need to keep an eye on the target. 70% accuracy, very high armor penetration. So if I'm dealing with heavy tanks or tank push, I can call in 1 or 2 of these guys and have them clean it up for me. And then I got the AH-1F Cobra. This is going to be more or less my workhorse. Considering this, I only got 4 of these. I'm going to go with 6 instead, because I want to get a bit more of these guys. And usually if you use them the right way, they're going to level themselves up pretty quickly. They're going to get that veterancy up to hardened veteran and possibly elite, depending on what kind of targets you got for them. Of course, the Vulcan, the Hydras, and the Itos, they are not that great against tanks, because most tanks are not going to be that impressed by 20 armor penetration. And then I'm considering them higher end tanks. But for that I got the Apache, so this one's going to be useful for lower end tanks. Finally, in the air tab, I got only 3 cards. 55 activation points is still a little bit on the low side, because you wanna, well, you'd like to get most of these units in here. Not only from the air tab, but also from the other tabs, because combined with Canada you get a lot of very, very nice units. Anyway, I went with 1 elite F-15C Eagle. Of course, my main air superiority fighter. It has 4 AMRAAMs. It has 4 AIM-9Ms, which are very, very good when you're dogfighting. I know that the F-16C Block 52 has slightly better turn radius, 300 versus 350. The problem is it has slightly lower ECM of only 40 versus 50. And they only carry 2 of these AIM-9Ms, whereas this one carries 4. So it can fire more of these missiles at the enemy plane, or planes, depending on how many units you're engaging at the same time. So that's why I went with the Eagle. Then I got another Eagle in here, which is the 15D Eagle. And this one has 4,000 kilogram bombs, which makes them very versatile. They can stun tanks, they can panic units, they can kill infantry and vehicles very quickly. And if need be, if you're dealing with, for example, with helicopters, they can use the M9Ms to go after the helicopters as well with their very good accuracy. They're not going to kill them outright, you need to fire twice at them, but they do have very good ECM, good turn radius, so you get a good chance of actually using those missiles if you really need to. And finally, tank snipers in the form of the FA-18C Hornets. Again, all American planes here. You want to use the Hornet C because it has fire and forget Mavericks, which means that it carries 4 of these fire and forgets. You don't need to keep an eye on the target. You can fire off these 2 missiles and then immediately evac the plane. And with 30 armor penetration, they are always going to do a lot of damage to enemy armor. They cannot kill, or they cannot usually kill most units with 1 missile, especially not the super heavies. But then again, it has 4 of these, so if you have the time, try to do a second run on that tank and get that kill in. Now I am left with 2 activation points, but I want to keep this a very general deck. And those 2 activation points, I just could not figure out how to spend those, because I can delete, for example, one of these, but then I'm taking away pretty much a significant part of my helicopter group in order to get 1 additional card somewhere else. So this is the setup that I went with. The deck code for this one is in the description below. So if you want to use it and adjust it, feel free to. But keep in mind that as of right now, and this is as I'm recording the video, the coalitions with prototype units are still bugged. And that means that you cannot use, or at least the new coalitions are bugged, you cannot use prototypes as you're going in-game. You can build the deck, but if you're building a deck of only prototypes, you're going to be left with an empty deck as you hit the battlefield. For example, if I were to go into battle with this deck, I would not have the Chimera, I would not have the Combat because it's a prototype unit. The Longbow is also a prototype, I would not have a Reconnaissance helicopter. These guys are not protos. The Centurion Marksman is a prototype, I would not have that one. So it is pretty much going to delete half of your units. So keep in mind, you can build your decks, you can adjust them, but for the new prototypes or for the new coalitions, I would steer clear of them for now and that's why I don't have any gameplay to show you just yet. But I expect them to patch this very, very soon, and that way we can actually start using these coalitions and I can start showing you gameplay. For now, there was this video for today. I might be doing another one later on about the USSR and North Korea, for example, or West Germany and Denmark, because I think that both of those are interesting combinations. Let me know what you think about the new coalitions down below in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you. What kind of decks would you like to be building? What kind of specializations would you use? Someone already mentioned that a NORAD motorized deck is going to be extremely potent because you get a lot of good infantry there. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you like watching this deck video, please leave a like down below, hit that thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, just hit the subscribe button and I'll keep the videos coming. So for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.